All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm gonna try something, and that's do like a couple how-to videos. If you're brand new to archery and never shot a bow or anything like that before, this is my twist on it and my thoughts and what I think might help you out get started. So the first thing, you need a bow. Okay, this is the bow I'm gonna show you guys on. Now we'll start off with my opinion. If you're getting just into archery, traditional archery, I think starting out you should be between 30 and 40 pounds. Lighter weight, you can hold a little bit longer and all that stuff. If you plan on hunting, you need to find out in your state the minimum draw weight for hunting. And in Ohio, it's 40 pounds. I'm not sure what it is in Indiana. But if it was me, if I'm in Ohio, I'm getting a 40-pound bow. That's the minimum weight needed for hunting deer. That's what I would go with. Now you can work your way up to 40, 45, 50, 55, 60 and on. I personally shoot a 55-pound longbow. That's just what I like. But for this purpose, I'm going to show you guys how to get started with this bow here. I've had this bow forever. It's a black bear. I'm not sure what year. It's either early 70s, mid 70s, somewhere around that. It's 40 pounds. It's 60 inches overall length. That's unstrung, but you know, we'll get to all that. But the first thing you need to do is find yourself a bow. And if this gets some attention and people seem interested, I'll go online and search and tell you guys what I think is a good starter bow. And you know, there's yard sales, flea markets, you can find a good bow. And if you even have questions about the bow you got, you can leave a comment, and I'll do my best to answer those questions and tell you what the setup should be. But first things first, okay, you got your bow, you got a string on your bow. There's two types of strings, maybe more than two types, but two types that I'm familiar with. That's the Dacron string and the Flemish twist string. Now, right away, you don't really need to worry about this, but if you do shoot and want to get more and more into shooting, it's my opinion that a Flemish twist string is better than a Dacron string. You know, that's just my opinion. You know, everybody's got their own. But I think the Flemish twist strings are way better. But you got your bow. I would suggest getting a stringer. If you don't have one already, you can do the hole between the legs deal and all that, but that will, over time, twist the limbs. It's what I've been told. I've seen it happen. But you need to get yourself a stringer. And when you get your stringer, put it on one end, on the other like so. Depending on the stringer is how many feet I put in. This particular stringer, I like 2 feet. You pull up on it and slide that string over that top limb. Okay? So, now what we're going to talk about is the distance the string is from the handle. That's called the brace height. You should set that before you start shooting. And how do we set that? I would highly recommend getting a bow square. They're fairly inexpensive, and you'll need it for two things: setting your brace height, which is, like I said, the distance from the handle here, this part of the handle to the string, and then we'll need it for setting our nock later. Now, you can use a tape measure, but these are cheap enough. I would recommend getting one. Now, this is an older recurve bow. I would suggest starting out with the brace height at 8 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it here. I was messing with it a little bit yesterday. I'm not going to lie. Right now it's about 7 3/4 inches. I'm going to get it out to 8 inches on the money. So to do that, you have to unstring the bow once you have the bow unstrung, I leave the top part of the stringer on, and I'll take off the bottom limb. You're going to take the string off. Okay, now you're going to twist the string one way or another to increase or decrease the brace height. I want the brace height to be longer, so I'm going to twist the string, I believe, let's see, counterclockwise. Is it counter? We'll find out. We're going to go 10 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I know I said 10, but let's just go 8. There's 8 times, maybe 9. I'll put that string back on there. And that was counterclockwise. I rotated it. String the bow back up. And take my bow square. I'm going to give it a check. And so I'm a little more than 8 inches now. So I went the right direction, just a little too far. I'm about 8 1/4. Now, if it's a brand new string, Flemish twist string, that string's going to stretch a little bit after you shoot it. So I'll leave this alone. And when we shoot it a few times, I'll double check it to see what it is. So a new string is going to stretch a little bit. Now, there might be some that don't. I don't know. And when it stretches, the string's going to get longer, making this distance shorter. So it might fall right in to that 8 inches I want to be. So first thing when you get your bow, you get your string on there, you should check that brace height. If you're shooting a recurve bow, I would start out at 8 inches. Even my long bows, which is what I shoot, I used to shoot 8 inches on my longbow too. I'm now down to 7.5 to get a little bit more speed out of it, but that's where it is. 8 inches, I'm roughly 8 1/4. After we get a knocking point on it, we'll shoot it a couple times and then we'll recheck that brace height. Now, setting the knocking point is going to depend on your arrows, what diameter arrows you're shooting. I've been in this game a while. I shoot 11/16 diameter wood arrows. I know where I want my brace height to be. I'm sorry. I know where I want my knocking point to be already. If you don't have one of these, I've eyeballed it before. You want to set, I'm going to set a brass knock. You can see that or not, that little brass knock. Kind of get the arrow level, and you can tell if it's not, you don't want that. You don't want that. You just kind of want it level. And for now, just getting started out, that's going to be good enough for you. I mean, we don't need to get too crazy right now. We're just starting out, seeing if this is something we want to take further. So what I'm going to do, these brass knocks, taking them off and reusing them is kind of a pain. I actually quit using brass knocks. I use tie-on knocks. But we're not going to get into all of that because right now that's way too much information too fast. Okay, I got my brass knock on the string there. I don't know if you can see this. Let me get on this side here. As you can see, the way I've always done it is when I'm on this side of the bow, I just kind of swing that square so it just lightly hits the rest. And then I like mine right at an 1/8 inch. That's where I've got it. I'm going to go ahead. I can't find my knock pliers, so I'm using needle nose at the moment. That's probably not the greatest thing, but we'll get by. I'm going to crimp that down there a little bit. And now I have my knocking point on the bow. Now, these brass knocks are a pain to take on and off. I think that's why a lot of people go to the tie-on nocks, but we're not worried about that yet. We'll get there. Load my arrow on there. That's not bad. We'll start with that and see how it goes. Okay, so we've set our brace height. We're about 8 1/4. Set my nocking point. Other thing I want to talk about is I got the little Sylvester sticker on there, which you guys will see. I've had this bow since I was a little kid, so that explains that. It's the rest. I shoot off the shelf, and that's where I would recommend people starting. There are the little stick-on rests you can get. I don't know much about them. You have to set your nocking point a little higher. But just starting out, let's keep it simple. You can buy these felted rests from traditional archery supply places. I'm going to throw out Three Rivers' name because that's who I use. And they just stick on. And they're relatively cheap. So Three Rivers Archery, you can get all this stuff. You can get a bow, you can get a string, Dacron string, Flemish string, you can get arrows. Whatever you may need, you can get from Three Rivers Archery. There are some other places you can get stuff that I'll mention a little later on. But, got a rest. Sorry it's already on there. I'm not taking this one off and putting a new one on. But we got our string, we got our nocking point. Now, a lot of people, when they're new to archery, they don't like using a shooting glove or a tab. Oh, I don't like the way it feels on my fingers. I can't feel the string good. It would be my suggestion to just get used to one or the other. There's shooting gloves, or there's tabs. Most guys are using one or the other that shoot traditional archery, that are good. They're using a tab or a glove. I personally use gloves. I don't even use this type of glove. I like this type of glove. I just like the way they are and the way they feel. I used to use these gloves all the time. Up until about a year or two ago, I stumbled across one of these, started using it, fell in love with it. I do not use the tab. I've messed with it a little bit. It just wasn't for me. But what I would suggest is you starting out, get one of each. Get a glove, get a tab. They're relatively cheap. Mess around with both of them. See which one you like, and then you know. But don't be afraid to try both. Now, there are people that saw, well, I've tried them and I don't like them. They end up taping their fingers, or there's these little string saver things. Pick a glove or a tab and get used to it. That's my suggestion. Okay. All right, I'm back in the house. I wanted to mention a few things before I ended the video. I did not talk about your draw length. So most bows have their poundage, like the bow is shooting is 40 pounds at 28 inches. And it just so happens my draw length is right around 28 inches. Some people's 27 inches. Some people's, 29 inches, 31 inches, 32 inches. Right now, we shouldn't worry about all that. We'll get to that point. You're just trying to figure out if you like archery or not. And like I said, if this gets a lot of attention, maybe I'll do some more videos and I'll talk about that stuff. But there is a draw length. You'll see people talk about it. In my opinion, right now, you shouldn't worry about it too much. Get as long arrows as they sell. They should be around 32 inches overall. Just leave them at that. We'll worry about cutting them down to different lengths and all that stuff, because a lot of that's going to depend on how you end up aiming and all that. But we're not worried about all that stuff right now. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that before I ended the video. Are you right-handed or left-handed? If you're right-handed, you're holding the bow with your left hand, drawing with your right. If you're left-handed, you need a left-handed bow. You're holding the bow with your right hand, drawing the bow with your left. How you know if the bow you have is right-handed or left-handed? If it's a right-handed bow, if you're looking at the back of the bow like I am now, the shelf is on the left side. If it's a left-handed bow, and you're looking at the back of it, the shelf is on the right side. That's how you know if it's left-handed bow or right-handed bow. Okay, the next thing you're gonna need in your first steps of traditional archery is something to shoot at. You're gonna need a target. There's all kinds of targets out there. $20, you can buy yourself a nice little bag target. That'll be perfect for just starting out. I do have one, but it's out and on my course, I'm not gonna go after it. I'm gonna shoot at the pig target. Now, just starting out, you shouldn't be extremely far away from it. So for this target, I'm 6 foot, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're gonna be 10 steps. That's roughly, I don't know, less than 10 yards. And just starting out, first time ever shooting a bow, this is where we're gonna start and get used to the feel of things. Okay, so before I get shooting, let's talk about how we're gonna hold the bow. Just grab a hold of it. Grab a hold of it with your whole hand like so. You don't need to grip the crap out of it, just a nice firm grip. Now, if you're watching other videos, people are gonna say you should only hold with that fatty part of your thumb should be the only thing, and you should hold with a couple fingers. That's actually how I shoot, but you're not worried about all that yet. We're just starting out. It's way too much information, way too fast. So just grab a hold of the bow. You don't need to squeeze it to death, just a nice little firm grip on it, and that's gonna be good enough. Now, the other thing I wanna say is when you hold the bow with your arm, you don't want your arm perfectly straight like that. What's gonna happen is that string is gonna hit your arm. It's one thing I didn't mention. You might wanna invest in an arm guard. They're relatively cheap. You are gonna hit your arm. I do have some. I'm not going to dig them out, but get an arm guard. So, but like I was saying, you don't want to hold your bow arm perfectly straight. You want your elbow slightly bent, slightly bent, slightly bent. Whether you're holding it straight up and down or you cant the bow a little bit. Hold that bow slightly bent, not super straight like this, because you're going to hit your arm every time. Keep that elbow slightly bent. Now, you heard me say canting the bow. I don't think you should start out shooting the bow straight up and down. That's just my opinion. You should tilt it a little bit. That's called canting it. Just what feels natural. To me, when I shoot a bow, I'm about right here. That's what's natural to me. That's the way I like. Some people, I won't name any names, but some people really can it. And hey, there ain't no right way, there ain't no wrong way. You do whatever you want. But mess around with both. Can it a lot, see if that works for you. If I'm shooting further, distance target, I might can it a little bit more to get that kind of archery arch. But at a distance like this, I'm gonna be my normal cant, which is about right here. And I'll do that up to 25 yards, my normal cant. That's canting the bow. So, covered that. Let's talk. You're gonna hear anchor point. Where do you draw the bow to? One thing I do want to mention, you should never draw fire the bow. What I mean by draw fire, you got no arrow on there, you pull it back and then let go of the string with nothing on there. You should not do that. That will damage your bow. Might not damage it the first time, but over time, if you dry fire this bow with no arrow on it, you're gonna damage it. Okay, now, anchor point. When you pull back the bow, you're gonna pull it back to a certain point on your face. I pull back to the corner of my mouth, and I would argue maybe 75% of people do the same thing. So your anchor point, that's what I'm talking about now. You're gonna draw that back to the corner of your mouth. That is your anchor point. That's the anchor point we're gonna roll with. You can feel it when it's there. Your fingers are gonna touch right there at the corner of your mouth. Now, how do you grab the string? Traditionally, there's two rules. There's two ways. You got 3 fingers under, which is the way I shoot, and I would say nowadays a lot of people shoot this way. Or there's split finger, where you have 1 finger above the arrow, 2 fingers underneath it. That is split finger, but you're still drawing back to that same anchor point. If you're shooting split finger, or if you're shooting 3 fingers under, it's the same anchor point. Now some guys do like a higher anchor point. They maybe have their bottom finger in the corner of their mouth or their middle finger. I have just a standard anchor point. It's at my first finger right here. Play with it, figure out what works for you. Play with 3 fingers under, play with split finger. Figure out what works for you. It don't matter, shoot how you're comfortable. Okay. When you draw back the bow and you get to your anchor point, you should hold there 2 to 3 seconds before you let go. So you should pull back, hold 2 to 3 seconds. I'm gonna do it here once. Before I get to that, I like to raise my bow up and kind of figure out where I want my arrow to hit before I ever pull the bow back. So I'm at my target, I bring my bow up, I'm kind of looking at the target of where I want to hit it. Now I'm going to bring my hand to the string, I'm going to draw back to my anchor point, hold a couple seconds, and let her fly. Now, there's all this talk about what's your dominant eye. I don't know. I shoot with both eyes open. Some people shoot with their left eye closed, their right eye closed. Mess around with it, see if that works for you. I'm gonna say for right now, for just starting out, leave both eyes open. And when you draw that arrow back, you're gonna pick a spot on that target where you want that arrow to be. You're looking at it. You're gonna draw back, hold, let her go. It's tough for me to hold at full draw. I'm a snap shooter. I don't hold very long at full draw at all. But just starting out, you should get used to it. I would argue that maybe you shouldn't snap shoot, but I do, and that's the way I like it. But I come up, I got my arrow where I roughly want to hit, I draw back to my anchor point, I hold a couple seconds, and I let her fly. Now, one thing I haven't talked about is release. When people release the string, everybody's got a different school of thought. Me, I like as little movement as possible. So when I release, that's my goal, just to move that little bit. Some people like, when they release, they really come off, some people come out to the side like that. Hey, whatever works. For starting out, maybe just try and keep as little movement as possible. As you get more used to it, maybe you like coming all the way off. Some people have a second anchor point where they'll shoot and like touch the back of their neck like that, or their jaw like that. I've done all that. For me, it's just as little movement as possible. That's what I like. But you try a couple different things. But you don't want to be all this kind of flaring around. Clean, simple, small movement. Let me pull these arrows. Okay, so I'm gonna shoot one more time. Gonna knock the arrow. I'm only like 5 to 10 yards away from it. Not even 10 yards, this is probably more under 10. I bring my bow arm with the arrow up, kind of hitting, pointing. I'm looking down that arrow shaft about where I want to hit. I put my fingers to the string. My elbow is bent, I'm not straight. I'm gonna pull back to the corner of my mouth, hold a second, and look at that, went right where we wanted. Do it again. Bring that bow up, kind of pointing it where I want it to go. Finger to the string, draw back to my anchor point, hold a second. There we go, pretty good. That's the way I do it. If you guys like this and this gets some attention, I'll do some more things. I'll talk about every aspect of archery I know about if you guys are interested. And you let me know if you're interested by comments. If I don't get much comments or reaction, I won't waste anybody's time. But if it gets a lot of attention, we'll see how far we can take this. But I've covered as much as I can think of for right now. I might add a few more things, but for now, that's a wrap. Thank you. Have a good one.